Hi, homeschooling supermoms. My name is Susan, and I am one of your administrators here inside the group. And tonight we have Devin, of course. Devin is with Homeschool
School
House
house
Calls
calls.
and How Do I Homeschool? So, as you guys know, Devin and I come out with workshops on a regular basis to share homeschooling information with you or things that homeschoolers need to be aware of. We are also joined with Candace Duggar. Candace, hello. Candace has joined us several times in workshops and is a member of both of our groups. And then we have our special guest tonight, which is Sabrina Lopez from Girl Speak Up. So, hi, everybody. We wanted to chat with you tonight on a very important topic. And as you guys know, Devin and I, typically in the month of October, we choose to
Yeah.
do some topics that kind of can be difficult to talk about on occasion. And we wanted to make sure that we created some awareness. And some awareness for today is what every homeschool parent needs to know about human trafficking. And our kids today, they have access to the internet. They have access to so much. And so we really need to make sure that we have an awareness of some of the issues that are happening today and where our kids can be put at risk.
Mhm.
So we wanted to make sure that we brought this topic to everyone's attention. And Sabrina is, as we mentioned, the founder of Girls Speak Up and has quite a bit of information to share with us on this particular topic. And before we have Candace take over, I just wanted to share a little bit of information with you about, I think I said Candace, I'm
Yeah,
Sabrina,
I'm
I
like, oh, I'm so
apologize.
not ready.
Yeah. And Sabrina's probably going, okay. No, Sabrina is, as I mentioned, the founder and CEO of Girls Speak Up, and she has 7 beautiful daughters that
Mhm.
she homeschools, and she's happily married to her husband, Jose Lopez. Sabrina and her organization, Girls Speak Up, raise awareness about human trafficking and help to empower survivors of human trafficking. We hear a lot about human trafficking in the news, and today Sabrina is going to share information with us to help us learn more about human trafficking and more about Girls Speak Up. Just so you know more about Sabrina, she encourages victims of human trafficking to speak up and be brave so that they can start to see the light at what seems a hopeless tunnel. So I hope that you will all join me in welcoming Sabrina to today's workshop. So, welcome,
Thank
Sabrina.
you. Thank you for having me on. This is exciting.
Well, we are excited to have you. Like I said, we like to create awareness, and we
Yeah.
really think this is a current topic that parents need to be aware of and understand things so that they can be more aware of it to help protect their kids.
Right.
And so we're going to start off with some of the basics here when it comes to human
Mhm.
trafficking. And let's talk first about, Sabrina, exactly what is human trafficking?
So human trafficking, there's many different definitions of human trafficking, right? Or not human trafficking, but there's many different forms of trafficking. You have labor, you have organ, you have the sex trafficking, and I think specifically that's what we're focused on here tonight. So sex trafficking requires force, fraud, or coercion in an exchange of anything of money value. So that definition only applies if force, fraud, or coercion in exchange of a money value, unless they are a minor. So that does. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. That definition doesn't apply unless the child's a minor. If a child is a minor and they're a victim of sex trafficking, they do not need to prove that it was forced, fraud, or coercion. That only applies if it's 18 and older. So it can get tricky in that sense. And I think the legalities of all of that, it's frustrating when it comes down to the adults and trying to prove that they actually are a victim of human trafficking. Um, so yeah, I'm reading off my notes here. So any minor used in commercial sex, in the exchange of any item of value for sex, is a victim of trafficking, regardless of their willingness to engage in the sex act. So that is the definition of trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking.
Well, and I'm curious, oftentimes we have in our minds who can be a victim of human trafficking. I think that sometimes we have in our minds that maybe it's kids that have, a, a, a difficult family situation, things like that. So, help us to understand more about who can be a victim of human trafficking and what's the average age that someone would, the average age for a child that is lured into human trafficking.
I think it's the main point I want for anyone to walk away from this live is to understand that anyone can be a victim of human trafficking. It can be um, children, men, women, boys, girls, anyone can be a victim of human trafficking. There isn't a set age or demographic, race, or gender that is exempt from becoming a victim. So the average age that a victim enters into the life, which is a term referred to, human trafficking or sex trafficking, is 12. So they can be as young as 12 that they can enter into or becoming a victim. So
Wow.
it's a super, super young, but we also have to think that it's, and I am trying to choose my words very, very wisely here. It's also because the vulnerability, right? So our children
Mhm.
are very, very vulnerable. They can't protect themselves, or a lot of them are, I don't want to say gullible, but they believe whatever is told to them because they're still
Mhm.
learning. They're still, just trying to. They're curious and they're trying to figure out, as they're growing up,
Mhm.
just figure out who they are and life in general. And especially when it comes down to adults, it's this power dynamic almost where they feel kind of obligated to submit to what an adult is requesting or asking. Um, so that's the reason why the age is so young. It's just because it's just that easy. And if you have massive vulnerabilities, or if you have that childhood trauma, or you know homelessness, if you're getting bullied at school, or those traffickers exploit those vulnerabilities when it comes down to our children.
Mhm.
So it's a whole process. It's a grooming process, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But just be mindful that it can happen to anyone. No
Yeah.
one is exempt, and the earliest age is 12 that I see. Definitely younger. I've seen younger, but that is the average.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, so we're gonna repeat this for the people in the back. Are homeschoolers or children who attend maybe virtual home, public school, virtual private school, are they protected from getting caught up in human trafficking at all? So,
So,
does that make
the,
sense?
yeah. So we would want to think, right, that in some
Yeah.
sense, and I'm speaking on this because I am a homeschool mama myself. Um, Prior to working in this field, I also worked in, this is just a side note, I also worked in, oh, I was a rape recovery counselor. So I would go and respond to the sexual
Mhm.
assaults that would happen. And the reason, this was one of the big reasons why I took my kids out of school and put them in homeschooling, was because it became very, like, I became paranoid. The cases that I would respond to, a lot of them were minors. The stories that I would hear were very, very traumatic. So I was getting that secondary trauma just as their counselor. But this was also during a time where I hadn't really come to terms with my trauma myself. So I just became like, oh my gosh, I have 7 daughters. Like, I can't, like, some of these assaults are happening in school. So I'm like, let me take them out. Um, and for me, I felt that that was the best way, that I'm protecting my kids because now I have eyes on them. I can see them. I know exactly what's being taught. I'm the one teaching them. Like, I'm protecting them from all the things, from the students, from the teachers, from pretty much everyone. And in a sense, it was like, yeah, I am with them, but then we enter into the cyber world and I can't protect them from that, right? And when you're homeschooled, it's the kids and the screen. But when they're on breaks, or when they're watching, TikTok and all these platforms that they have, where it's Snapchat and even YouTube, you'll be surprised. some of the video games that they play, like you would think that, oh, that's just innocent. Those are just, kid platforms. And no, they're not. As a mentor myself now, and in the job that I do, aside from Girls Speak Up, I have cases where a lot of my clients have been trafficked and they have never met their trafficker because everything has been via the
Online.
social media or online.
Mm-hmm.
So are your kids protected because they're at home? In a sense, yes, but not really. So the answer, we would
Yeah.
want to hope and be like, yes, they are because you can see them, but no, they're not.
Yeah.
They are very, very, they're still very susceptible to becoming a victim of human trafficking.
Yeah.
And I think it's even more, um, I don't want to say more, it's more dangerous because you just never know who that person is. So you don't know who they're talking to. These people are, traffickers are very, very manipulative. They're crafty at what they do. Um, so it's a scary world. It really is a scary world. That social media world, just the online world, is very, very scary. There's so many different platforms that we think are safe for our children, but there's predators that are actually out and to lure our children into this life. So yeah, the sad truth is, no, our children are not protected even though they are homeschooled.
And I was sharing with the ladies what has been shocking to me. We do a lot of anti-bullying and mental health work, but finding out how big of a target our kids in the homeschool world are because we don't talk about this, because we don't train on this. That's like a lot of times just they hear you're homeschooled and it's like double down. We've got to really sometimes think about those things in the context of preparing our children, because these are issues that so many don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that all this kind of leads into the question that I want to ask about predators and what they look like. To me, I find it so interesting that you've mentioned, Sabrina, that some of these predators are on social media and they've never even met
Mm-hmm.
their predators, and they're trapped
Mm-hmm.
into human trafficking. So, and I guess I'm going to ask you to kind of expand on this, but I guess I had in my own mind what these human traffickers, these predators looked like. Can you kind of give us an idea of what they look like and how they go about luring someone
Mm-hmm.
into human trafficking, whether it's a face-to-face type of thing or via social media?
Okay. Um, so there is no actual real description of what a predator can look like, or a trafficker can look like. A trafficker can look like me. It can look like you. It can look like any one of us, right? Because there are traffickers that are also women. So we need to be mindful of that. They're not, they're not exempt from trafficking children, men, boys, or anybody else. So also keep that in mind. Traffickers can be men and women. Traffickers can also be pastors, law enforcement, teachers, teenagers. Um, there is no specific description that anyone can give you to say, hey, teach your kids to watch out for this specific type of person, because that does not exist. Traffickers can also be parents. So it's really, really sad that this is the world that we are living in, and it's not to scare parents, it's not to scare moms and say, oh my gosh, now
Yeah.
you can't you can't trust anybody, and you really, it's just to bring self-awareness so that
Yeah.
like to look out for the red flags and what to watch out for, and make sure that you're teaching your kids um, online safety and consent and all of that, because those small conversations are going to be your saving grace down the road, because the more you keep having these honest conversations with your children about what consent is and what online safety is, and sharing your locations and making sure we're having appropriate conversations, or when they feel like something's off in a direct message on Instagram or something like that, to trust their intuition and to reach out to you or someone that they know is safe. These are the conversations that help and can prevent human trafficking, is making sure that you're including your children in and having open, honest conversations with them, because again, human trafficking predators or traffickers, pimps, whatever, they can look like anybody. I can't give you a real description of what to look out for, because like I said, it can literally be anyone. I'm talking, like I mentioned, law enforcement, judges, pastors, anyone, even teenagers. Teenagers recruit within school. So teenagers have also been traffickers. So it's like I said, it's very scary if you think about it, but I don't want that to be the fear. I'm not trying to instill fear. I just want moms and dads to be self-aware, to know, like, we're not protecting from one specific person. We just need to be mindful that it is happening in our backyards and it can be anybody.
So why do you think victims don't come forward? I need to look at my question, make sure I say it right. So why do you think that? Do you think maybe maybe they don't even realize they're victims?
That is I'm glad you said that. Because a lot of people, I don't want to say people, a lot of victims, especially speaking on the survivors that I work with, they don't identify as human trafficking, right? And it could be for many reasons. So like I mentioned, if a trafficker can be law enforcement, why would anybody want to speak up? Why would anybody go and say, hey, I was trafficked by an officer? And then it's like, especially in that area, in their community, the officer, most of the time, what we see is there's a cover story, someone backing them up, or if a report is made, the report gets, kicked out. They're being threatened. So there's a lot of reasons. Like, it's hard for people to come forward, especially if the traffickers are people that are in higher power, like whether that's a judge or law enforcement or a pastor, or we're thinking like, oh, no way, that there's no way that person can be a trafficker. A lot of the times, a lot of survivors don't come forward because of the shame, the guilt, or they're being threatened. Traffickers definitely, they would threaten the things closest that you love and say, if you say anything, I will kill your pet, your mom. They'll threaten things to make you, to cripple that voice and to make you silent. And it's tough. I want to say it is very tough. And I think people get it they think it's so easy to just be like, just go and say something. But when you're dealing with the amount of trauma, when you're dealing with like a threat or being blackmailed or just abuse, it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do, especially that shame. That shame can speak so much louder than anything else. Another reason is, if like I mentioned, right? Parents are sometimes traffickers. Some parents will sell their children to pay the rent. So that's called like either survival sex. Even children will do that for themselves if they get kicked out, right? There's runaway children or kids that get kicked out, and they'll have to go and just, some of them will say, I have to do what I got to do just to make sure that I'm still alive. So there's a lot of factors that play into why a lot of these survivors or victims don't speak up. And we just need to be a community that listens and walks alongside survivors, rather than quick to judge and ask but why, because you will never understand why someone never spoke up or why they didn't leave, because it's not that easy. So it's just being that person to walk alongside, not in front of them, not behind them, not to judge them, just walk alongside them and really be someone that they can trust, they can turn to, so that they feel safe. So when they are ready to leave the life, which is the human trafficking world, or when they are ready to step forward and speak up, they know that I have a support, and whatever is about to happen when I walk in through the doors to make this report or to make sure that I want to get justice out of this, I'm still going to have that safety net behind me. If we're walking into that blindly, it's just like, forget it. I don't want to do it, because it's heavy. It can become a lot. It's not an easy thing. And then also keep in mind, like I said in the definition, proving that you are a victim of human trafficking If you're an adult, you would have to prove force, fraud, or coercion. That in itself is so hard to prove because we have the terminology as she was a prostitute. Okay, I hear that, but how do you know that she wasn't forced to do that? How do you
Mm-hmm.
know that she didn't have a gun held to her head and someone told her that she needed to go sell her body for money and then need to meet a quota for her trafficker? We don't know that. So we're really quick to label rather than, like I said, take the time to actually listen to what that person is going through and understand the full, you know, like the whole situation. And it is very different for minors because, like I said, you don't need to prove that. But again, they're minors, so they're scared. That shame is real, and then it's just like, who do I trust, right? Because it normally is an adult. I thought I can trust my pastor. I thought I can trust my mom, my dad, my teacher, and now you're asking me to come forward, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So just walk away with trafficking. A lot of survivors are physically free, but psychologically they're not. So when we're
Yeah.
asking them to speak up, that's tough when psychologically they're not free, if they've been told that you're not good enough or nobody's going to believe you or you're making this up, or but you
Mm-hmm.
know you need to do this because you need to help your mom with the rent, or being blackmailed or threatened. Psychologically they're not free. They don't feel like they have that voice to speak up.
Yeah, and so Sabrina, on this too, I want to talk from being just being a parent, and if I'm not that human trafficker, but I find out my child has been trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
Candace did a workshop for us, gosh, a couple months ago, and the big takeaway for me was when she said, "Hey, look, when your kids come forward, don't blow up at them," because as parents, the first thing I would think of is, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Like really react that way. And, Candace pointed out, have these kids not been through enough, whether it's bullying or whether it's trafficking or whatever, have they not been through enough? And you as a parent better take a deep breath. And like you just said, Sabrina, walk beside, if this is your
Mm-hmm.
child, take a deep breath and be their support system to help them get through this, because man, oh man, I can't even imagine what
It's
that
that needed
child has been
trust.
through.
Right. And the
Yeah.
last thing they need is to be accused by, or, blamed
Mm-hmm.
or even put down by their parents. Like, what did you do that? That will shut someone down real quick and just like, I don't even want to say anything. Then forget it. I'll
Yeah.
figure it out myself. So it's tough. I'm not saying it's going to be so easy. Like, hey, when your child comes up to you and says, this is what's happening, as parents, we're gonna freak out. Yes, because we're just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But I think we also just need to be mindful about our reactions, our body language, what we're saying, because you want to be able to get all the information from your child. And you won't be able to do that if you're accusing, blaming, and making them feel
Mhm.
bad or stupid about what they did. So it's like, remember that you were once a child and remember all the stupid things you did, and make sure that you're just there to be like, okay, I know that wasn't the best idea. Walk me through this. Help me understand what happened so that we can figure this out together. Because at the end of the day, I'm your mom. I'm not always going to agree with the decisions you made, but I'm still always going to be here to protect you and make sure that, nothing happens to you or that you're safe or whatever, the situation, how it presents itself. Um, but it's not an easy thing. It really isn't.
Well, and so many of us grew up without having social media, and our kids today, in addition to the typical pressures that we've experienced, and I can speak because I know I'm older, but now we've got social media. Now there's another avenue. And how do you help your child and put an end to this if you don't listen and take a deep breath? Like you just said, it's not going to be easy. But boy, oh boy, take that deep breath and see how you can walk through this with them and help them out.
And it's going to be at a little bit at a time, because also keep in mind, you're, as a mom and as a dad, you can only handle so much too, right? So it's, even if we have to take breaks, even if we have to take it day by day, piece by piece, where we're not becoming overwhelmed or frustrated or just reacting off of our emotions, especially about what your child's about to tell you. You call it quits at some time where it's like, okay, I can only handle so much right now. We'll revisit this in 2 days, right? So that's okay. You don't need to get all the things, everything said right at that very moment, because a lot is going on. A lot of emotions are flaring at that time. So bit by bit, um, very, very helpful is what I've also learned when it comes down to like taking the time to get things out of my kids. But it all starts in the conversations. And I know I'm kind of rambling, but I just have a lot in my head. So I know we said like with social media is so crazy right now, like with platforms. So just a little plug for parents, and this probably can even be a whole nother episode, honestly, is the apps that kids use. Be careful. So on my phone, like what I do with my children, um, on my phone, especially with iPhone users, you can set up where like it's a family, I forget, it's not a family plan, but
It's
you,
a family ID. It's like the
yes,
Apple ID.
yes,
Yes.
yes. And you can set up the like the parental things on there. So for my children, anytime they want to download an app, I get a notification and I have to approve that app first
Yeah.
before they can use it. So I know there's a feature, especially on iPhones, that you can check that to make sure that you're seeing that. And the reason why I do that is because these apps are very, very crafty now, where there is an app, specifically an app. There's a lot of apps. There's an app that looks like a calculator, and it looks just like a calculator. Like if you were to pull up your phone, right? It looks, I don't know if you can see, like my calculator looks wherever that's at, right here.
Mm-hmm.
The app that is the one that you need to be concerned about, if it says calculator and it has like a percentage sign next to it, that specific one is a volt. So when you open it up, right, if you open up that calculator, it'll function like if make pretend it'll function just like this. It'll look just like this when you open it up. That app would allow you to have a code. So you'll put in the code, and then it'll open up to a whole different thing where now it's like you can save pictures on there.
So what's the name
It's
of this? What's the name of the app?
I think it's calculator, and then it has like a percentage sign next to it. So you can open up pictures on there. You can open up, it's like a whole other like search engine browser. Well, you'll go and it's like you won't be able to find the history if you were to open up on Safari on your phone or whatever internet
Yeah.
browsers on your phone. And then say like if the parent comes in, all they have to do is swipe down and it'll go back to the calculator. So when I say that they're being very, very crafty with the people, how they're designing these apps, it's that crafty. There's volts where they'll have photo volts where you'll have your regular pictures on your phone, but you can save the pictures that you don't want seen from anybody in this photo vault, and you can add a password. There are apps where it's, what's another one? Like there's Snapchat. There are apps where it's like everything just kind of disappears. You'll text like meetups and stuff like that, and then everything will disappear. And there's no connection, so that if a victim is being trafficked within that app, there's no way law enforcement can trace it back. So, like I said, that can be a whole nother thing where we can create like a list of all these apps that parents should be aware of. And that is the reason why I make sure I'm improving all of my apps that my kids use, because I want to know what they're downloading and what they're getting into. So yes, with Snapchat being one, just being a crazy one, OnlyFans, TikTok, these are very dangerous things that we sometimes are, just thinking, oh, it's okay, it's just Snapchat and TikTok. Not really. It can get a lot of my clients that I serve, they have been trafficked through Snapchat, TikTok, Kick, or whatever ones that are out there now. So Instagram is another one. Twitter is another one. There's a lot. So definitely check into what your phone allows as far as like the parental rights for your kids, because if they have that feature where you're able to approve the apps that your children have, do that, because that's a way of preventing your kids from becoming a victim or falling into the hands of a trafficker.
Scary.
Yes. So I think if you were to search even like volts, like just volts on your in your app store, you'll see all the crazy apps that come up. So at least you become familiar with it. So do random checks on your kid's phone, you know, go through and make sure that it's not. But the calculator one is the scariest one. I see that happening a lot. That is the big one.
It's very scary.
Yes.
So, what are some of the myths about human trafficking?
So let's bring that up. So a lot of the myths are um, many people think that can only happen, trafficking can only happen like if they are kidnapped, taken in a white van, and like, you know, they're transported to another country. Absolutely not. That is, yes, I'm not saying that does not happen, that because that definitely is very real, but that is not the end all be all. Human trafficking is, let me see, is that traveling or transporting? Okay, so human trafficking involves moving, traveling, or transporting a person across state or national borders. So that is a myth. So the reality is human trafficking is often confused with smuggling, which involves the illegal border crossings. Um, the crime of human trafficking does not require only movement whatsoever. Survivors can be recruited and trafficked in their own homes or hometowns. So you do not need to leave your home to be trafficked. You do not need to be kidnapped, tied up in a white van, and taken across border to be trafficked. So this can happen in your home. Another myth is, I'm reading them off my phone here. Another myth is that it's always or usually a violent crime, and that is a myth. So I have on here, by far the most pervasive myth about human trafficking is that it always or often involves kidnapping or other ways physically forcing someone into a situation. In reality, most human traffickers use psychological means such as tricking, defrauding, manipulating, threatening victims into providing commercial sex or exploitative labor. Um, Also, even romantic partners, right? The traffickers they'll develop this relationship with someone, and they'll end up becoming a boyfriend, and then it's a gradual pushing on the boundaries to get them to where now you're just in a full-blown trafficking situation. You have no idea how it happened, and you're just like, no, I'm not a victim because he was my boyfriend. So now not only are you in a trafficking situation, but you developed a trauma bond with your trafficker where you really do not see how this is a trafficking situation, because you are so in love with this person loves you, and you would do anything for this boyfriend. So keep in mind that it can also be a boyfriend or girlfriend. Let me see another one. All commercial sex is human trafficking. So all commercial sex involving a minor is legally considered human trafficking. Commercial sex involving an adult is human trafficking if the person providing commercial sex is doing it against his or her will, which is the forced, fraud, or coercion. People being trafficked are physically unable to leave their situation or held against their will. This is a huge myth because a lot of people think that they're either tied up in a basement or they have been kidnapped and they're refusing, like they can't leave, right? That's why I mentioned a lot of survivors are physically free, but psychologically they're not. Where that's the biggest myth, is that we think that they're just locked up away somewhere, and that's not the case. So it is sometimes the case. More often, however, people in trafficking situations stay for reasons that are more complicated. Some lack the basic necessities to physically get out, such as transportation or a safe place to live. Some are afraid of their safety. Some have been so effectively manipulated that they do not identify at the point as being under the control of another person. So that is, and I know we touched on that a little bit. And then traffickers target victims they don't know, when the reality is many survivors have been trafficked by romantic partners, including spouses, and by family members, including parents. So the majority of the time, traffickers is someone that that the victim will know. So those are just some of the myths that I get questioned a lot, where it's just like, oh, is it true? It's like, that's not the case. So my thing, anytime like you see all these social media stories, like I don't know if you guys heard of that whole Wayfair situation. Did you guys hear about that? Where they were like, they were saying they were trafficking children within like cabinets or something through the Wayfair company. It's crazy. So that the whole theory, what we see on social media, I just ask that you do not believe them unless it's coming from a credible source. Because a lot of the sensationalism and what people put on social media, like we soak that up and we believe that when it's far from the case. Like the movie Taken. I don't know if anybody has seen that, but that movie definitely like it is trafficking that can definitely happen, but many people believe that that's the only way trafficking can happen, and it's not. You can literally, it can be, my kid can be in the other room and could be, groomed or exploited, and I would never know if I'm not aware of, who they're talking to, the platforms that they're on, and all of that. So it's just being very, very intentional with your kids, especially the ones that are at home, making sure that you know who they're talking to, know the apps that they're on, just being involved. Like I know with parents that have a lot of children, it's just like, oh my gosh, but it just take the initiative to really be involved.
And Sabrina, I think one of the most interesting things, and I'd love to hear your ideas on what parents should look for. What do we need to look for? And as leaders, right? What do we need to look for kids that are under our care? Because we see it happening throughout church groups. It's everywhere, right? It's not.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. And so when we talk in our workshops and share, because a lot of kids who've been bullied, it's very easy for them to be moved into the grooming process because they're looking for somebody to connect to. That
Acceptance.
self-esteem
Yep.
is so low. And so we're telling parents things to look for, and even burner phones, materials showing up, more seclusion from the family, right? Like all of these things. Do you have a list of things you want parents or other leaders to be aware of, or things that might trigger that conversation besides our apps?
I do. It's on my other computer. Let me grab it here.
Sorry. Sending
No,
you
it's
another
okay.
way.
It's okay. So yeah, okay. So if we're talking, look for as far as like
just signs. Like, so when I'm talking to people about bullying, since 90% never tell their parents and 70% never tell anyone, how do we even know there's a conversation or like that warning sign, or I'm talking to a child and things may come up? So are there things parents can look for, or
yes.
other people like our other family, that we can look for? And even as leaders, we have these kids coming through our co-ops, we have them coming through our groups, we're seeing them at different events. How can we things we should look for in that might not,
Okay.
that might be a little subtle.
I do have a list here. I'm trying to find it really quickly. Okay. So I have 4 signs that someone is being groomed for trafficking. So new things. So if your child, like parents, your children well, you're probably going to be the first person that knows your kid in and out. So if your kid is coming home with new cell phones, nails done, new sneakers, a new purse, a new jacket, and it's like you're seeing that pattern, like you're always coming home with new things, but you don't have a job. How is this possible? I didn't give you money. I didn't take you. That's a good sign that something's going on. Like, where are you getting this money from? And it's all in the questions that we ask, but it's all in the delivery, right? So I know for me, like if I'm being attacked and it feels like an interrogation, I'm going to shut down. So parents, make sure that when you're asking these questions, again, this is however you have that conversation with your kids and however you communicate with your kids, them better. But for me, I know that my kids will shut down if I'm just firing questions. So I'm going to be smart about the situation. And I'll be like, okay, where'd you get that? I like it, like show interest so that you want them to be able to give you more. Like, that's so cute. Where did you get that? And then kind of keep in mind what they're saying. If they come home with another thing, wow, that's another thing this week. Where are you getting this from? So it's not looking like mom's just being nosy and she's all up in my business and I don't want to talk about it, right? So just keep signs of the new things that they're coming home with, expensive things like designer brands, things like that. Or like cell phones. I see a lot of kids come with cell phones because that's a way that the trafficker can, especially the burner phones, trafficker may be able to give your kid a burner phone, and that way nothing is connected to the plan that you have, so they can't turn it into law enforcement to clear it out or get the information from that phone. A change in their behavior. So if your child is one that is just bubbly and it's just that social butterfly, super popular, and then all of a sudden you're noticing that she's losing interest in like talking to you or hanging out with friends, or is very, very snappy. Like, I know some children, or especially teenagers, they have that moody behavior, but when it's a drastic change, that is a red flag to just be like, what is going on? And ask those questions like, hey, I'm noticing that you're not hanging out with so and so, or why the sudden change? Like, why are we not so chatty anymore? Is there anything going on? So just show concern. Just don't blame it on, like, if a girl, oh, that's just, it's the time of the month for her. No, there may be something going on there. New friends. So traffickers can connect with potential victims through social media or anywhere youth gather. So that's bus stops, malls, churches, community events. So once there is an initial relationship established, a trafficker will separate the potential victim from those important to them. And then they have a whole new group of friends that you don't even know about. And they're constantly chatting with that person, or they're being very secret when they're chatting with that person. So be on the lookout for new friends, especially, like I said, if it's going from hanging out with a group of friends that they've been hanging out for years, and all of a sudden they just kind of cut them all off, and now we have this new bunch. Explore that with them. Ask the questions. Hey, what happened to your old friends? You're not hanging out with them anymore. I noticed that they don't come around often. What happened? Just ways to really figure out where the disconnect happened, rather than saying, who is this person? What happened to the other person? We don't ever want to feel like we're interrogating them, because you will push them away, and unfortunately push them into the hands of a trafficker if we are being, like, if they feel like we're being nosy and just like, oh my gosh, mom, like, why are you interrogating me? Because I see that a lot.
I think you're right, because we see that a lot with the manipulation of that conversation. We've armed the trafficker with more information to bait against the parents and divide that relationship even further.
Yes.
And Sabrina, I hate to have to run. I have another show starting right now, but it was so great to meet you. Really,
yes,
I would
too,
love
Candace.
to connect with you more. Thank you, ladies, so much for having me on today. And I'm going to finish up the replay of this as soon as I hop off my live show. So
awesome.
Thanks for joining us, Candace. Bye.
The other one is the disconnect. So like she said, like, the traffickers tend to want to separate them, and that is their like sweet spot. They want to separate, because then they can fully control and manipulate their victim, where it's just like, oh, like if they are asking a victim to do something, once they're completely isolated from their family and their friends, the trafficker can then say, well, what are you going to do? No, you don't talk to anybody. They don't have your number, right? Like, they're not going to believe you. You cut them off. So it's just it's a mind game. So be very observant if they are disconnecting, not just from their friends and family, but from interests, right? So like if they're heavy into sports or music, or if they're very actively involved in church or after school programs, if they're just completely cutting off everything, then ask like, what's going on? Where's your time being directed at now? Like, I've noticed you're not really interested in that. What happened? What changed? Is there anything else you want to try out? Because you still want to get the information from them to really figure out where and why did they lose interest. So those are the four main that I would just, especially for parents, just keep tabs on when we are trying to look for the red flags in dealing with the grooming and the recruitment of trafficking.
Yeah.
This is all great information to help us as parents.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. So, Sabrina, you started Girls Speak Up. You founded the organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about Girls Speak Up and how you came to how you founded the organization?
Yeah. So Girls Speak Up is my baby. Girls Speak Up was it actually became a nonprofit this year in March. And the reason Girls Speak Up became a nonprofit, is because I was a victim of, I am a survivor of human trafficking. Um, at 13, I was recruited at the mall. And back then, like we mentioned, social media wasn't as popular as it was. Like I remember there was MySpace, but it wasn't like anything that there is today. Um, so at the mall where I'm from up north was the hangout spot because I lived in New England, so there's nothing to do when it snows. So that was the hangout spot for teenagers. And every weekend I would, go with my best friend. We would just hang out at the mall. There was a huge arcade over there. Um, my parents trusted me. I was an honor student. I was captain of my basketball team. I wasn't a problem child. There were some issues going on with my family, with my older brothers that took the focus of my parents. So I think it was just easy for them to be like, okay, Sabrina's not, it's not that they didn't need to give me the attention, but they had so much trust in me that they were just like, yeah, you can go hang out at the mall. It was literally 10 minutes up the road. It wasn't like I was so far away. Um, but again, we weren't aware, like human trafficking wasn't, I know it's been around for a long time. It just wasn't as spoken about and, literally in your face now than it was then. So, um, I didn't know. So when I was approached by two girls my age. So they were probably like maybe 16, 15. And keep in mind this was a process. So every weekend I was at the mall and I noticed this group, and one of the popular boys was like really cute. So I guess they were watching me every weekend watch him, like just checking him out and just kind of wanting to be around. And I was very, very insecure. I was like a skinny little twig. I would never approach that. I would just never fit in. That wasn't me. So I guess one day that was, it was go time, and they approached me and they asked if I wanted to be put on, where I know what that term now means. But then I thought they were just kind of playing Cupid and they were just going to play like hook me up or play matchmaker. And put on is like a term where they're just going to, just have me meet him and get me into life. So I didn't know anything. I was like, yeah, if you can do that, like that'll be so cool. I can talk to the cutest boy there. And it was just so intriguing. Like, oh my gosh, she's noticing me. And because my insecurities were my vulnerabilities, and because um honestly my best friend was probably the only friend that I had, I envisioned myself in that group. And how cool would that be? Like now I get to be the popular girl. um so long story short, we ended up dating, and we dated for, I want to say, throughout that winter. And it wasn't until maybe 8 months, 7, 8 months into the relationship where things started to take a turn, and it became physical, it became verbally abusive, it became, um, it was bad. That I was hiding, like my mom still didn't know about this, because I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend. I was hiding bruises, because I went to private school, so I had to wear a uniform. So anytime I would still wear like the long shirt or jacket, I was hiding bruises from her. Um, I was literally living a double life, honestly. Like I explained it to my clients where Monday through Friday, I I was at home and I was this other girl. Friday, 5 o'clock is when my shift started. So I was blackmailed. So I was recorded and I would be blackmailed. And that's how he would keep me, is because he would threaten to show my family, my mom, the videos that I was being forced to do. Um, I was also forced to perform other acts in front of, other people, that whoever he wanted. Um, the only thing, I know that there was money involved, but I never received that payment. It was whatever he, needed, whether that was more money for, to get drugs, because now I'm just like, okay, what did I get myself into? And now I'm just in this whole world where I have no idea what I'm into. And I think it was because of that fear, right? That I didn't tell my mom, because I know that was a question before. It's like, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you say anything? I didn't know who I was more scared of at this point. I didn't know if I was more
Yeah.
scared of him, because I was so confused as to, like, how did we get from being Like I thought he was the cutest thing in the world. I was so in love, and I thought he felt the same about me too. Now you're abusing me. I don't know what happened, what shifted, but in my head I'm trying to figure out, okay, maybe it's something I did. Maybe I can maybe I can fix this. Or if I was more scared of my mom because I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend and she has no idea where I'm at. She
Yeah.
really thinks that I'm at my best friend's house, right? So that was the double life that I was kind of living. And it wasn't until I became pregnant by my trafficker. So I remember that day very, very vividly, where I was throwing up in school. I was sent home. It was actually my mother's birthday, and we took tests, the pregnancy test. They came back positive, and that's when I was able to tell her as much as I could explain. Because at that point, I didn't know it was trafficking. At that point, I knew I was in a very messed up situation at the age of 14, right? Because I was in the
Mhm.
life for 2 years. I got pregnant when I was 14, and then it kind of just dragged on for the entire duration of my pregnancy. Um, but yeah, I was able to explain to her, like, hey, I don't want to be with him, and kind of protected her in a sense because we're very, my family is very overprotective. So I didn't want to say so much because I knew how my brothers would respond. I knew how
Mhm.
my mother would respond. My brother was still dealing with some issues in and out of jail, so I didn't want to set anybody to a point of no return. So I've dealt with my trauma in silence for years. And just as I know my story may seem like, but you had plenty of opportunities. Like, what happened? It's just, it's coming and it's hitting me in my head. So I'm explaining it the way it's just coming out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I remember it was on my mom's birthday that I found that I was pregnant, and then just finding out I was pregnant was like, thank God, my mom knows, and now I don't have to go back. So it was because I ended up getting pregnant that I didn't have to go back. I still dealt with like the threats and all of that,
Mhm.
and at that point, I didn't even care because now it's just like, I don't. My mom knows what she knows, what I told her, but she's not sending me back. Like, I'm grounded, thank God. I'll be grounded, no problem, because I don't have to get hit anymore or anything like that.
Mhm.
So fast forward, I had my daughter. I and for years, I'm talking about years, I never talked about it. Everybody thought that I was just going to be this, high school dropout, living off of welfare, the government assistance, and I was just so adamant that that was not going to be me. Like, I looked at my child like she saved my life, so I owed her life. So I was going to do everything in my power to make sure that my daughter had a fulfilling life. It wasn't going to look like a child that shouldn't have been here, because she definitely deserved to be here because I'm here because of her. So for years, I just kind of dealt with that trauma. And it wasn't until COVID that happened that now you're kind of forced to kind of think about all the things, right? You're just sitting in that trauma. And like I mentioned, like, even though I came to terms with the fact that I was a survivor, probably I want to say 7 years ago, but I never really spoke up about my story. I kind of was just like, I'm just working in the fields that I've worked in. I've worked at the safe home, connecting with the other clients that I
Mhm.
served. I was kind of like, oh, okay, our stories are very, very similar. And I meet the definition of what trafficking is. But even when I came to terms with identifying, I still did not share my story. And it wasn't until we were forced to be in lockdown that I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm not going to be ashamed of something that was just a piece of my
Yeah.
past. And then I almost felt like a hypocrite because here I am being a mentor for survivors of human trafficking, but yet I'm still so quiet and crippled by what had happened to me. So COVID lockdown was where I started on Instagram, and I just started with just empowering and uplifting and, just being brave and sharing that hope. Like, I went through this when I was a teenager. I ended up having a baby by my trafficker. I'm mindfully turned that image and that thought, like, oh my gosh, I have a baby by my trafficker, into something where it's just like, I don't look at her as, oh my gosh, that's my trafficker's daughter or baby. I look at her like she saved my life, and I want to make sure that all survivors know that their stories
Mhm.
need to be heard. It is powerful.
Yes.
You can do so much with your stories to save other survivors, or to help
Yes.
other survivors, to help parents understand that this can even happen in malls, right? And that's where I was just like, all right, telling myself, girl, just speak up, just do it,
Yeah.
just do it. And for 2 months, it was just me posting on my Instagram just empowerment quotes. And for 2 months, I did not share my face on there. I did not share my story. But the day that I did, I shared my face, I shared my story, but also the day that I shared my story on a podcast as well. And that was also the
Mhm.
day my mom found out about my entire story. So Girl Speak Up is literally my baby because it set me free in a sense. And that's what I want to share and give for other survivors. Like, being a survivor is not your whole entire life. That's not who I am, right? It's just one piece of me. I'm still a mom, I'm a wife, I am
Mhm.
a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, and yes, I am a survivor, but I'm not going to look at that as, oh, poor me. It's like, no, girl, if you're struggling, let's do this together. Let's walk alongside each other and make sure that if your voice is really, really low, then I want to help amplify that, because your story needs to be heard. And it
Yes.
should be heard because it's it can save so many lives. So many lives. So that's how Girl Speak Up came about. And I'm a woman of faith, so it just, God has presented this, you know, as a platform, as a nonprofit, and I've just been trusting and moving and
Yes.
just listening to that direction, and scared as heck, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been a founder or a CEO, or ran a nonprofit before, but it's just having these people that I met even through this platform, even through this nonprofit, and just encouraging me and helping me and being on lives like this, that has really helped Girl Speak Up grow. So
Mhm.
even when we think that human trafficking is such a big thing, no, what you guys are doing in this platform, learning about it, that's where the true change comes from, is because
Yeah.
each of you are trying to take a time out of our evenings, a crazy week, to learn about something, so that we can then continue to keep that momentum going and
Yeah.
really continue to push that, what we've learned into other homes and other communities and other platforms. So it really starts with us right now. It's not even
Yeah.
about like legislation and judges and all that. It's within our communities because it's happening in our backyard. So that is
Yeah.
my passion for Girl Speak Up, and wanting
Mhm.
to do this, and just allowing God to just use me and my story and my voice to make sure that others are heard.
Yeah.
Sabrina, I'm so proud of you for speaking
Thank
up
you.
and
Thank
Yeah.
you.
sharing your story, because that takes enormous courage. And like you said, you have the chance to change a life in so many ways,
Yeah.
to potentially prevent something from happening, to someone who has found themselves in this situation, to find help, and then also those that maybe have been in that situation and now out and finding freedom in
Yeah.
telling their story and things like that. So I'm so proud of you. So
Yeah.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Um,
It's very tough to share, just because a lot has happened in I just was 16 years ago, and then a lot happened in those 2 years, where it's just like, I still it's still scary to share, because I still get victim blamed almost, where it's just like, well, you could have left, you didn't have to go. And it's just like, you don't really understand the whole logistics of how and what was transpiring at the time. And so I'm saying that because it's just like, show some grace. It's not an easy thing to share. Um,
Yeah.
and it's hard, but
You
I say
you
this
were
because other survivors will feel the
yeah,
same exact way as me.
you were a baby.
Yeah,
As a mom, you
that's a
were a
baby.
baby.
Hmm.
So, if someone says that, they need to come talk to me and I'm going to beat them up. So let's just do that. Because, I
Yeah.
mean, I have 15, 13-year-olds. You were a baby.
Hmm.
yeah, and when you think at that very tender age, because we're all very naive at 13,
Yeah.
through a lot of years, but I'm
Yes.
naive, very naive at 13,
Yes.
and we think at particularly in the teen years, that we can handle things that we find ourselves in a situation we think, oh, well, we can handle this.
Mhm.
But yet we still need our families. We still need to lean on them. And
Yeah.
we're still very young and naive at 13. And to think your innocent visits to the mall. I mean, I think of how many 13-year-olds go to the mall
Mhm.
Yeah.
and have the freedom, as parents, we let our 13-year-olds go shopping in the mall, and how something so very innocent can truly turn into something. Wow, look at what happened. So
Yeah,
how
tragic.
important it is. Yeah, how important it is
Mhm.
as parents. Your tips that you gave us as parents is so important,
Yeah.
that we tune in and make sure that we stay connected with our kids, because it can you said you were going to private school.
Mhm.
It can happen to anyone.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And a lot of people think like, oh, it happens to those that are in, that are dealing with poverty. Like, yes, it does, but I was also going to private school. I was also captain of my basketball team. I was very, very involved in school. I was on a honor roll. So, that's what the grooming part of it looks like. Traffickers will wait till the end of time to go for what they want. And it was a long time of grooming. That's why I was dating him for so long um until he snapped. But during that process, now I realized when I
Mhm.
was dating him and everything was fine, it was bounced. So it's like, oh yeah, one picture here. I want a cute picture for my phone only for so that I can see. And then it's just like, what about this picture? What about this picture? And then it's like I'm trusting him because I thought we were dating, and I was led to believe that we were in a real relationship, and then also felt pressured, like if I don't, because he was older than me, if I don't comply, that he would just move on or lose interest or cheat on me, because there were multiple
Mhm.
girls coming in and out the house. So it was just like I didn't want to be a lame, and that was what was said, like, oh, you're so lame or whatever. I'll just go and find another girl that would. So it's like peer pressure exists. It still
Yeah.
does, and it did very, very much so in my situation. And that's when we're saying, like, when boundaries get pushed, and that's what traffickers do. They'll exploit your vulnerability, and they'll push those boundaries they you know until they have what they have from you. It's
Yeah.
disgusting. It really is. But honestly, I wouldn't change, as sucky as what happened to me. I wouldn't change one bit, because I ended up learning, growing. I have my daughter, my beautiful family, my husband who's super supportive and is the co-founder of Girls Speak Up, and we've just been it's just been an adventure. Like, it's been just one
Yeah.
journey, that if I didn't go through any of that, I would not be here sharing the tips and resources and all the things that I've learned and went through with families and helping other survivors. I would not be here. So I don't regret it one bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're saving lives truly by reaching out, and so I'm so proud of you. So
Thank you.
on that note, how can
Mhm.
we, or how can our group members join the fight with you against human trafficking, as well as support your organization?
So on my website, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was so dark in here. On my website, www.girlspeakup.com, there is a link to go ahead and donate specifically to the organization. And the donations help fund the program, also help fund just the everyday things that we take for granted, right? Food, transportation, shelter. A lot of our survivors that are coming out of the life, they don't know where to go next. So they need that. Like, you can't tell a survivor, oh, you need to get a job. How do I get a job if I don't have transportation? How do I get transportation if I don't even have a place to sleep? So things need to connect. So what we're trying to do is just raise money or the funding, so that we can help survivors flee from their trafficking situations. If they need a place to stay, if they need baby food, or if they need to feed their children or get to work, we want to make sure that we're just wrapping around those services for them as a whole, so that they can re-enter back into the community safely and away from their traffickers, so they don't have to rely or go back to the life to get extra money
Mhm.
to feed their kids, or gas money to go to work. So you can donate on there, or I did send you the link where it's like a charity registry through Walmart that we use a lot of like our gift cards for, whether that's food or just, a monetary gift card so that we can purchase like rooms at a hotel for them if they need that, or Uber rides, or like they just need to go shopping at Walmart and get some baby stuff or diapers or things like that. You can purchase however many gift cards you like, and yeah, everything goes towards our survivors.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. And we will make sure that we post that link either, well, we can post it above this workshop as
Yeah.
well as individually in the thread area below this workshop as well. So that is a
Perfect.
great way for us to be able to get involved. And so thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for your
Yeah.
information.
It was good. It
It's
was a lot of
very,
great
very helpful.
points.
And
Yeah.
if you guys, those of our members, if you guys have questions or need further information or how to reach Sabrina, here's her website. But also, if there are specific situations where we need to reach out to Sabrina, do let Devin or me know, and we will be
Mhm.
happy to connect with Sabrina and get you connected. So again, great information to help all of our parents. Sabrina Lopez,
You're
thank you so
welcome. Thank
much.
you. It was a joy to be on here. And again, if you guys ever need anything, we need to do a part 2 to this, let me know, because there's a lot of information to unfold, and
Yeah. I
I'll be
definitely
happy to
think
jump
we
back
need to
on.
do those apps.
The
I
Yeah,
apps,
think
yeah,
we
the
need
apps are very
absolutely.
important. The apps are something that I
Yeah.
think every apps and consent. I always talk about that with my parents because they feel like we need to I teach my kids consent at the age of 2, or not even 1, and it's very, very different. So apps and consent are that's my favorite that I like to talk about because it's mind blowing, and you'll just be so shocked to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that app really exists. And I work hand in hand with a retired law enforcement officer from Tampa, so I have like the secret um, rundown of all the apps that they even know about. So yes, that is that's good information right there too.
Yeah.
That sounds great. We will definitely connect with you on additional
Mhm.
workshops. So that sounds great. So, Sabrina, I want you to stay here with us for just a few minutes. We're going to say goodbye to our group members. And so, again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sabrina, again, thank you so much for this workshop. And Devin
Yeah.
and I will look forward to seeing our group members in future workshops and inside of our groups. So, everybody, take care. See you soon. Thanks for joining
Bye.
us. Bye for
Have a great
now.
night.
Bye.
Bye.